Everybody, welcome back to the Audience Podcast. Today I want to break down a blog post from prolific podcaster Mitch Joel. You can find this article on his website, 6pixels.com. You can subscribe to his podcast, 6 Pixels of Separation, on any of your favorite podcast players. This might be a recurring series where I'm breaking down other prolific podcasters, getting their thoughts and gathering their thoughts and summarizing it for you. His latest blog post is How to Podcast 2020 edition. And right off the bat, in the very first paragraph, if you're following along with it in your web browser, is he created the first tutorial back in 2008, and then another in 2012, and he's doing another 2020 edition right here. So he's been doing it for some time, he's been sharing it for some time, and his opening sentence, personally, I can't think of a better time for a business or individual to create a valuable audio and video content in podcast format. I mean, here we are 12 years later, and he's been doing it probably even longer than that, using audio content. And it's still a great time to do this. So I think if you're on the fence, yes, there are millions of podcasts at this point. It's okay. You can still carve out your niche, your audience, through a podcast. And it's a great way to connect and amplify a message that you're trying to get out into the world. Let's keep going down in this blog post. As we enter paragraph number 2, he says, I'm still no professional. And I've been listening to Mitch's podcast for quite some time. It's very marketing driven and business heavy and a little bit of tech. Sometimes he mixes a lot of tech in depending on which episode. But I've been following for a while. He's a professional. He started an agency. He sold it to one of the largest brand agencies in the world. And it's just, it's humbling to see a guy like this who has walked many different paths in his creative journey and his business journey, his podcasting journey, say that he still doesn't feel like a professional. And I think that's where a lot of great content creators, not just podcasters, but content creators, artists, they're all sort of cut from the same cloth, where we just never feel like we're complete, no matter what stage of the game we're in, day 1 or day 10,000, it doesn't matter. A lot of people are still pushing to get better with their craft, and none of us feel like we've ever made it, to the top. But let's keep going. Let's keep going and see what Mitch says about podcasting. I like this line right here. He says, I'm not an audiophile and I have no specialty or propensity towards audio engineering. I see it as a fun and different way to communicate and connect with people. I'm okay with the fact that it's often raw, flawed, and basic. I just like collecting conversations. And I think that is admirable. He does a fine job. And I'd say that also the guests that he have are well prepared as well. Like a lot of the guests that he has, they know they're going to be on a podcast. It's no surprise to them. Podcasting is not a surprise. Having conversations, not a surprise. Public speaking, not a surprise. And I think that even with my own personal podcast, the challenge there is that a lot of guests, like if we're all trying to do an interview show like Mitch does, because it's a fantastic way to build brand awareness, networking, etc., we will have people who are just not ready for podcasting yet. And they might have the technicals, they might have the technical abilities, they might have a microphone, they might have good lighting, they might have a great camera. Well, sometimes they just can't tell stories. And I think that one of the things that Mitch is constantly doing is he interviews a lot of people who are writing books, so authors. And these folks are ready to pitch their book or their upcoming book or their public speaking gig when, public speaking thing was a thing. So these folks are all well conditioned in this space. And while a lot of people lead with, hey, it doesn't matter to me, I don't need to make a great sounding show, it's all about that conversation. Yeah, to a degree. But for most of us, for a lot of the rest of the world, at some point you want to care a little bit, where the editing has to be fine-tuned just a smidge. You want to trim the fat from conversations that are just not valuable to the audience. If you go back and watch my Descript video, editing a podcast using Descript on YouTube, youtube.com/Castos, I kind of go through how I approach editing a show, not from like a technical, well, also from a technical perspective, but also from just a logical perspective. Like, how am I crafting a story? What am I removing? How do I identify these different patterns? So I think at some point we all have to just try a little bit more than Mitch. No offense, Mitch, but I think at some point we should care about editing and just sharpening things up just a touch. Let's keep going. Here's another line item which I like, and also kind of goes with this last statement. I don't do much to prep for a show over the course of the week in between episodes. I simply look at my social media feeds and for smart people saying and doing smart things, especially those publishing a new business or nonfiction book. And I reach out to those who I think might have something unique to say about a specific topic related to business management, leadership, and innovation. So yes, I mean, just reinforcing what I already said, a lot of these folks, they're ready to pitch. They're ready to tell a great story. Most of my conversations are recorded over Skype using Ecamm call recorder. My hardware used to be much more simple, a USB headset directly into a MacBook Pro, but then I changed that in the middle of this year. And I also follow Mitch on Instagram. And amidst, of course, the pandemic and no more public speaking, which he was prolific at and prominent in, he switched to a real high-end setup at home, which most of the gear you can see in the gear video that I put together, also on youtube.com/Castos. So he goes on to talk about how he's upgraded his sound, and it is a big difference. Like, I could tell for years that he was just using a headset, and now you can tell that it's a degree up. Once the audio is recorded, I use Audacity to edit the show, export that file into WAV, and then put it into a program called the Levelator to equalize voice. So a lot of this stuff is to talk about the technicals, right? And here's where he has some stipulations, and this is where it spills over to his guests. No Wi-Fi. So the connections on both sides must be hardwired into the internet. Wi-Fi causes all kinds of problems, 100%. Like, you can lose signal, it can just bounce really quick, and you hear that tinny, mechanical, computerized voice every now and again, especially on Zoom calls. No video, even if you're only recording audio, close all of your video capabilities. This is the bandwidth sucker, absolutely. A good headset. No iPhones, no cheap headset, no onboard mic. If your guest doesn't have a quality headset or mic, I usually pass on them as a guest. And this is going to be something that is going to be much more the norm 2021 and beyond. Like, if you're not ready to be a guest on somebody's show, like, if you don't think being a guest on a podcast is going to be good for your brand, you're sorely mistaken. Fantastic way, an affordable way, except for the time that you have to, invest into it. Fantastic way to grow your brand, grow awareness, drive traffic, all of these things, build links, build relationships first and foremost. So if you don't think being a guest is a good idea, you're, again, sorely mistaken. But number two, if you're going to be a guest, you got to prepare just a little bit. It doesn't cost that much money to buy an affordable mic under $100 to be a good sounding guest on a podcast. You got to step up to the plate. As somebody who's been a podcaster for 8 years, not only do I really appreciate the fact that somebody has invested in it, it just makes the show way better. And here's Mitch saying he'll just pass on a guest. Fantastic. We all have to start being a little bit better these days. No ringers. I asked that all guests mute all ringers or buzzing that could interfere with the sound quality or flow of the show. I'm sure he's telling them, hey, just shut your phones off. He didn't do it with Seth Godin in the last episode, which is fine. It actually rang a few times. And it is slightly distracting. Like, even though it's a prominent name, high-profile name, as a listener, sometimes you're just like, boy, it can kind of be a little, annoying after a little while if somebody doesn't really shut it off. Close all software. Of course, when you're closing all software, it's less usage of your CPU, which is fantastic. And no shuffling. I always remind my guests to hover over the microphone, not shuffling, keep shuffling down to a minimum. He's talking about physically shuffling around, and absolutely, which goes back to like good headset, caring about recording a great episode. How many marketing podcasts I used to listen to that I know I can no longer tune into because I know it's that same sort of, bravado where they're like, hey, doing a podcast is easy. I just hit record and it doesn't cost me a nickel. I never bought a microphone. I just do it raw and it's like, no problem. Who cares? No editing. Yeah, but that same, which is fine in the beginning, but these are seasoned marketers / brand people in image, quality, care, All of that stuff resonates when you actually just sound good and understand it. And man, they're like banging the desk. They're in a 12-foot room with, echoes. They're using the internal microphone, and I just can't listen to it. Sometimes audibly, I can't hear it. If I'm getting ready for the day, I'm taking a shower, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm doing dishes, getting my kids ready. Sometimes the phone is on the other side of the room. If you're not giving it an effort, I literally can't hear it, and I'm just never going to tune in again. So I'll have forgiveness if the content is really good. Well, if the content's kind of mediocre and the audio is terrible, I'm just not going to continue to listen. And he says he sums it up as, it works for me. I'm sure many podcasters weep a little when they hear how I record 6 pixels of separation, no EQ adjustments, no removal of ums and ahs, no editing to tighten up. Who knows? Maybe somewhere in the next 100 episodes, I'll catch the audio engineering bug and break out the more complex audio editing software. But for right now, I'm still just having fun with it. 750 episodes in, Mitch Joel is still just having fun with it, which is a testament to podcasting, a testament to audio content creation, because it doesn't have to be as nerve-wracking as a video edit. Picture yourself as, and maybe this is you're trying to start a YouTube channel, you're trying to be a vlogger, and you're looking at people, let's say, like, the staple of YouTube vlogging, Casey Neistat, and you're looking at the way he not only storytells, but the quality of his video, the quality of his edits, most importantly, that can take you hours, days, months to master a way of editing like he does. And with audio, you just don't need to invest that much time. I mean, unless you were competing in like a serial podcast game. If it's spoken solo interview, the actual technical editing time shouldn't be as high. But when you do invest into it, it will make quite a bit of difference. And then wrapping up, he just says, until then, happy podcasting. If you subscribe to the podcast, I definitely implore you to subscribe to 6 Pixels of Separation. If you love marketing, the 50,000 foot view of global marketing, technology, business, books, authors, etc. Mitch does a fantastic job of it. Check out his blog, 6pixels.com. That's the breakdown of how he approaches podcasting. Curious to hear what you think. Do you have a favorite podcaster that we can sort of break down on this YouTube channel? Leave it in the comments below. YouTube.com/Castos. Thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. We'll see you in the next episode.